Hi everyone. Today's video on dream interpretation is taken from a recent IPSA Professional Training seminar delivered by Steve and Pauline Richards. The context comes from a recent interaction between Steve and a member of our Discord server, who we have left anonymous. Due to the previous posts from this individual, Steve was aware of some of his context, and he offered a series of dialectical prompts off of the back of a dream that he recently posted. What follows is a series of writings from Steve, which he expands on in this seminar, on the process of proper dream interpretation. I say proper here, as dreams are potentially highly inductive phenomena, and whatever suggestions one has received from the culture or previous therapists on interpretation will influence how one relates to them, which has immediate implications in the moment for productive analysis, and generally undesirable downstream effects as the dream material is left unengaged with appropriately. We highly recommend this video is studied closely, as it's absolutely packed with indispensable information for informing one's own dream interpretation process, either for informing clinical practice or for self-development. If you'd like to be in a seminar just like this one, studying professionally at IPSA to become a therapist, then we invite you to check out the course webpage in the description. Before we begin then, it's important that we take a look at the dream itself. It goes like this. I had a weird nightmare. I was on holiday with my family and we rented this place. It was time to go home, so everyone got in their cars and drove home. My parents left me and it was dark. I tried to get out of the place while a haunted Shaggy, that guy from Scooby-Doo, was trying to get me. With this in mind then, let's get on to the seminar.
I very seldom offer anything on dream analysis in text form. So with that caveat, the Shaggy character in the cartoon series Scooby-Doo never met a real ghost. In every case, repeatedly, he misread a situation which had to be deconstructed later. What he believed was contrary to the truth. There was an element of self-deception, which is typical of complexes. The ego needs to have its misconceptions allegorized sometimes in dreams. So there's a lot there just to break down in and of itself. So I'm talking about the cartoon now. And of course, he immediately referred it to his most recent experience of it, but then he did let go that he had experienced the Scooby-Doo and Shaggy character when he was a child. So we have a timeline connection there straight away. So this prompt is quite a heavy one. It's quite laden with lots of things. I said that he never met a real ghost, and he didn't. Those of you familiar with the original Scooby-Doo series, every week they thought they were meeting the occult or the supernatural, but at the end, every time, without fail, it was the deception of a human character who had to be unmasked that was the cause of it. So the unmasking was a kind of a revelation of the fact that they had self-deceived themselves into repeatedly believing the wrong thing. So bearing in mind the context again and how he'd expressed himself on the Discord, he is repeatedly making mistakes in interpretation of others around him. He's repeatedly in a state of not understanding what's happening in his family, and then ending up in the same situation over and over again. And then he mentions Shaggy. Okay, let's try to find out what influences may have reached him. And I know he came back with the other one, but that's absolutely fine. And the reason I said self-deception is that is the foundation for what I'm going to say later. And I'll draw you guys' attention back to that. And then I say the ego needs to have its misconceptions allegorized sometimes in dreams. So that's the mythic structure of the narrative of dreams. They reveal very often what we're doing wrong with respect to our instincts. So those complexes that are most active and most influential with respect to the ego, and are therefore in the self-concept, appear with the dream ego in the dream narrative, and we see it mirrored back to us as an allegorized form of a narrative. Sometimes. So that suggests that I'm not saying this is what has happened. I'm just offering a prompt, a dialectical prompt. See if you go with it. They said, thank you, Steve. Based on what I know, dream symbols are personal. Your Shaggy might be different from mine, especially considering the fact that I haven't seen the cartoon that much as a child. Not that he'd never seen it, but he hasn't seen it much. Bearing in mind that most of his posts are about his nuclear family, and in particular his mother and his siblings and sometimes his father, then that's likely to be the root with respect to his adaptations to instincts and complexes. That will go back to his childhood. He supposedly works on his personal myth, but he immediately leapt into the present and didn't consider the timeline. And it's understandable why he would do that, because a lot of Jungians say, start with your personal amplification or your personal associations. Hadn't got him very far because he keeps repeating the same kind of process of revealing a dream narrative, and he doesn't act on it. Then we get this, the next two bits. What I have seen are the memes of Shaggy, mostly that of Shaggy being portrayed as a powerful character. And because of that meme, they might add him in one of the one-on-one fighting games. I believe it's Mortal Kombat. I think the fact that this godlike character haunting me down, haunting, not hunting, and I remember haunting was a typical scenario of the Scooby-Doo cartoons, has something to do with my illusions of grandeur. Now, if we're psychodynamic about this, we take what he says and then we look underneath it. There's a compensation that he's aware of. He's aware of a compensatory process. It's a psychosocial situation. It's the family. Therefore, we have Ardley immediately. We have an inferiority complex at work, which is being portrayed to him, and that he's experiencing as an inflation that he's uncomfortable with. That's a good thing. We know that beneath Adler is Freud, so therefore there are instincts here that are underpinning everything. The nuclear family is full of Freudian instincts. Not all of them healthy, but some of them are just misdirected and not that bad, but they're still operant. So he's basically made a confession, but he's still trying to conceal it and then distract. And this is typical of complexes. They say, I'm here, but you can't really see me. I will suggest to the ego that you're talking shite, and I'll reflect your own theory back at you to show why the ego of Desert Dweller, this is Desert Dweller's complex, metaphorically saying why he should not listen to you. But I'm still going to do this at you by utilizing your theory back at you out of his mouth through text. So then said, as I mentioned with the caveat, and this is exactly why I generally don't get involved, the point of it was to offer a provisional understanding of amplification, which should always be dialectical. If your Shaggy is personally connected in the direction you've indicated, then you may well understand its context. Without further amplification, however, what routinely happens is that a dreamer remains locked into the personal associations and limitations that describe the conditions under which the dream was created to illustrate. Stop there, that again is quite heavy. Amplification, if we do it too soon, is a mistake. If, however, you see a repeating pattern, and I'm taking his Discord post as that repeating pattern, that someone is actually locked in and requires amplification, then if you're going to get involved with a dream analysis at all, you start with a prompt which will tickle the complex into responding and therefore revealing itself, which I tried to do with that first post. And then pointing out to him why I did what I did, but not completely, but just sufficiently to let him know that I wasn't making a naive 101 mistake in looking at a context that wasn't his. I'd actually already appreciated the context before I even spoke to him or decided to communicate with him. And again, typically, as I say, that if we don't amplify off our own understanding of ourselves, we remain locked in to the representation that's been given to us by the dream. We relate only to that. And if that's telling us what's wrong with us and we identify with it, we misinterpret the message of the dream and actually reinforce the over-attachment to the wrong thing, which is what I was trying to suggest. So under the conditions which the dream was created to illustrate, and then an illustration is not in itself a solution, it isn't, it's just a portrayal, only a description. If there's an opportunity offered by seeing that character in its originating context, and then bringing it back to the fact that he did say he'd had access to it as a child, for you, when you first encountered it as a child, you then have an opportunity to track it forwards rather than backwards and unravel your present ego associations, thereby stripping them of that which keeps you locked in. But that requires a degree of objectivity, and complexes don't want that. The whole point of the personal myth in going back is to come forwards, not to go back and stay there. That's the trap. You go back and you come forwards. You then see your present ego adaptation in a context, which is the longitudinal timeline. So he comes back then and says, I'm curious about the part regarding seeing the character in its originating context, because the fact that I have latched onto this meme, Shaggy, the awkward and coward, become the godlike character, correlates greatly with my personal myth. I technically was Shaggy in regards to his personality, especially in my childhood. And I guess the meme was some sort of dream that came true. So he's beginning to question himself at that point, which is helpful. And he's seen the value of actually going back. But remember, he denied this at first, didn't want to go back. And he said it didn't really affect him. But now he's saying, no, I was like that as a child, awkward and a coward. And then the godlike representation, which is in the memes, as he recalled it to do with that video game, is the Adlerian compensation. But Scooby-Doo, the character of the dog, is a perfect, and I've said I'll have to qualify this, but culturally unrecognized. We don't normally think about Scooby-Doo in this way. Expression of instinct in relation to Shaggy's ego. Scooby-Doo is an animal, specifically a dog, the closest companion animal species to humans. Scooby speaks, but in his own language. He doesn't speak in the language of the ego. It's all jumbled up and it's got its own nuances. In his own language, it was largely symbolic in relation to human conscious language. As a character, he represents a connection to instinct in a cross-modal state. By cross-modal, what I mean is that he's neither human nor is he an animal. He's a theriomorph, as Jung himself would have referred to it. He has a trait, which is the capacity to speak as a human would, which makes him or marks him out as not being an animal, but he's also not fully human. And when he does speak, it's not quite right. We have to translate it, which means an effort in communication to the instinct to understand it. Hence, he's imperfectly related to Shaggy, brackets the ego. This means Shaggy as ego has only a partially resolved relationship to his instincts. There's something wrong. He's not fully communicating with them. And those instincts, which being misdirected, that's a Scooby, falls into the same traps as Shaggy, the cartoon character, does. The origin of the association in your timeline will tell you more than its later modification. In other words, if he's conscious of the compensation, and therefore he apparently understands that seesawing effect between inferiority and superiority, that's in the moment. It doesn't tell him about the origin of why that was set up in the way that it does. It just tells him that he's in a state of oscillation in an Adlerian sense with an overcompensation, and is an overcompensation because it's so inflated to a sense of inferiority he had, but he's not tackling that sense of inferiority as a child. He was at the beginning of this dialogue more interested in staying still and moving forwards. Even if he had to reject me, as you say, that's like there's something wrong with you, that's your association, not mine. You know, which again, that was the complex defending itself. So the origin of the association in your timeline will tell you more than its later modification. The later modification is what I mean in this next bit. That will represent where you are now, not how you got there. Shaggy and the misdirected Scooby consistently misinterpret human deception as being occult or supernatural. So there's the prediction error, if you think about it in a Mark Solms sense. Hence the ego is naive and the instincts are misfired. What seems to be such things are most often ego fictions. That is to say, the misinterpretation of something as being supernatural or occult. It happens to children when they have no power. They fantasize. And Jungians come along and feed that later, and they have their own fantasies as adults, and it serves the same purpose. Wrong purpose. So hence the ego is naive and the instincts are misfired. What seems to be such things are most often ego fictions and literal internal projections. So the idea of the occult and the supernatural is the repetition compulsion that's projected by the ego internally to try to understand the powerlessness that the child felt and the adult version of this guy feels in the present day to day. And the dream is trying to mirror that and say, there's your compensation that's necessary. You have to overcome this, but not by becoming a pendulum moving from inferiority to superiority. You have to tackle the Freudian elements that are latent in there and are disguised by your feelings of rage. He very often expresses rage, another Panksepian instinct. That's why Shaggy is still Shaggy. He hasn't changed. Repetition compulsion. Your nightmare, as you reported it, may be a self-portrait of misapprehension, therefore misunderstanding, and internal projection. You'll only know if you can objectify yourself, step back away from your preoccupations with yourself, enough both to look and to test it out. If you do, your instincts will respond. Your ego can then be free to disidentify with Shaggy. Insofar as he still identifies with Shaggy, he's still trapped. So if we interpret a dream literally as it manifests, that can be a problem. And here's where I try to find ground between Freud and Jung. Freud said there was a manifest and a latent content to dreams. Jung argued with him and said, no, there is only the dream. There is no latent content. And yet he said that the dreams contain symbols, which, although they're manifest as symbols, their meaning is latent. So Jung contradicted himself there on that. So if we accept then that there is a manifest and a latent content, we have to understand what the symbols represent. And that's always because they're embedded in a narrative which portrays something. Once we've got that, we have the situation as it is now, which Jung, I think, correctly identified when he said that that's what dreams do. It's a spontaneous self-portrait, in his words. But we have to work back from that and find out, how did I arrive in this situation and why am I keep repeating it, keep working it through? It won't be because of archetypes, it'll be because his instincts are frustrated, and what he needs to do is to engage with them properly. So if he can do this, if he can step back and look at himself objectively, he will have the ground upon which he needs to stand in terms of ego strength, and then he can begin the process to disidentify the Shaggy character. He says, I think the timing of the dream is even more important because lately I've been thinking a lot about my job application for the public prosecution and whether or not I should pursue it. It's a really good job, it pays well, and it is also very respected in the community. This is status. This is his play system, his seeking system. This is his Adlerian maladaptations. But he'll have them because he has Freudian maladaptations. He has to tackle them, and that's in the context of his family and the confirmation he received or did not receive as a child from his mother and his father. His mother is still a problem to him right now. She's still playing all sorts of emotional games, and he defaults back to being that child again, unable to solve the problem. So his dreams are trying to push him into doing something about it. Right, but I've heard lots of negative comments from friends who say that the job takes away a lot of your personal freedom. Hence is the tricky part. My friends aren't in the public prosecution, but they know people who were in. So he's being misdirected again. Things aren't what they seem.
Frenemies.
Frenemies. And that's the human deception, which is disguised as the occult. The occult element for him will be his early relationships to his mother. When people project the occult, it's because they don't understand something. Occult means hidden or dark, not there. I don't understand it, so I'll fantasize instead. So he's got that as a ground state. And then in the Scooby-Doo cartoons, the deception of others is what they fall for every time, because the ego in the form of Shaggy is naive and the instincts in the form of Scooby are not properly resolved and are misdirected, so they keep repeating the same mistake. The other problem is the fact that my family are happy for me for applying and really wish I would get accepted. I think this has to do with the fact that in my dream, my family left me alone with this haunted, shaggy ghost thing. So yeah, he's aware now. He's not talking about this figure being a god, or in the video game. He's talking about him as he appears in the cartoon, which at first he was keen to separate himself from. I have this idea in my head that my light-hearted personality isn't fit for the job. Play, seeking, and Ardler all rolled in. Instincts and social adaptation, and that I can't afford to sacrifice my freedom for a job. But a part of me is not sure if all these negative aspects of the job are real or not. Prediction error. He doesn't know if it's real or not. That will go back to his relationship to his mother, who forms his relating complex, his relating system, his anima, if you like. The imprinting on his mother means he can't relate. So there's the Jungian element that comes in with the instinctive element, Freud, and with the social adaptation, Ardler. I am finding it real difficult for me to objectify myself because I literally feel trapped, just like now I felt trapped in the dream. But he was trapped in the dream because he was being pursued by Shaggy. Shaggy chased him and he hit a fence, a barrier, and he couldn't get any further, and Shaggy caught up with him. That would suggest his instincts are regarding his situation as being so serious, he has to be pursued in order to understand it and to read the symbol correctly. So that suggests there's a hell of a lot of libido bubbling up in him, but he's still maladapted to it because he's refusing at the moment to interpret it in a way that his instincts could agree with. When we negotiate with instincts, we have to do so on the basis of something that they can agree with. If they disagree, they'll still kick at us and push. I have this idea in my head that my light-hearted, yeah, because we just got that, yeah. Where are we? Just like the chapter, every time I found an opportunity to get out of the place and run from Shaggy, yet a fence suddenly appeared blocking my escape. He's not meant to escape. That's the problem. He's meant to understand. That doesn't mean turning around and having a dialogue with Shaggy, by the way. It's what does Shaggy represent? If he has a dialogue with Shaggy as the usual Gestalt method of dream work, or as the Jungians who are copying the Gestalt therapist now, if he does that, he's having a dialogue with something which is not the problem, but the impression or the imago of it. And he might get something out of that, but it's far more efficient to simply let the instincts take him to the place and the time when the problem happened and ask the instincts to help. If you ask Shaggy, who is a confused mess and doesn't adapt well, the danger is you just reabsorb that image into your self-concept and you're exactly where you were, and the dream has failed in its compensation. So comes in and says, small doubt, where does cross-modal state, or what does it mean in this context? I've interpreted your prior usages of the term cross-modal to mean something that overlaps between two apparent poles, e.g. the overlapping zone between conscious and unconscious. So I said, in this context, it's neither one nor the other. In other words, it's neither one state nor the other. It's transitional and undifferentiated clearly into one state of resonant engagement or the other. And by resonant engagement, I mean a resonant engagement with the instincts and with respect to a dream, with the entire narrative. The meaning of the dream is a resonant pattern, and if we do resonate with it, then we are in harmony with it and understand it. At that point, we get beyond what is manifest. And one way of attempting that is to amplify the dream at the appropriate moment, because you move away from its immediate context, but don't amplify it into fantasy and into archetypal reductionism or any of this nonsense that Jungians do, but amplify it with respect to its elements. Where do they go and how does that relate to my timeline? That's proper personal amplification, rather than being stuck with the dream image as it is or turning it into something that it clearly isn't. It's that sweet spot in between. Yeah, so then comes in, doesn't he? And I just made this comment here that depth psychology is hard. A conflicted ego is usually too preoccupied to learn. And it is, because a conflicted ego tends to invaginate, pardon the expression, and become preoccupied with the images and the fantasies that it's generating or are being generated by complexes to distract itself. So basically it's a displacement which serves a complex and protects the ego from, apparently anyway, being further invested with energy and stress and so forth. So that it becomes too preoccupied to learn. It takes time and people can't see past their own ceiling. Nobody can. That's unfortunate. It's a fact. Whatever our ceiling is at any one moment, the best we can do is bang our head on it and then push a little to try and lift it up a bit more. If the conflicted ego doesn't know, it seems to itself that no one else can. You can't give to those who cannot receive. That's for therapists. So a conflicted ego doesn't believe there's a way out and doesn't believe that anybody can know what it doesn't know. So that means if you try and help it, all it will do is project its complexes at you, or at least all it will do initially is to do that because it's still in a state of conflict. Therefore, you can't know and you can't help. And then stupid therapists come along and say, you're the best expert on yourself. You say that to somebody who's neurotic, all you're going to do is spin the plate of neurosis for them ever faster. What you need to do is not to claim to be an expert by verbally saying that you are, but by knowing what you know about the situation that a person is typically in who presents that way, access the homeostatic principle within them, get the attention of Jung's self archetype, which is supposed to be impossible, isn't it? You know, you can't do that quickly, but you guys know you can through hypnosis as an example. Build the affect bridge, build the connection, and then things start to change because everything after that point is downstream. It's moving forward. You've uncorked the energy and it's moving in harmonic resonance with your approach as a professional. So I said, what are you doing with your dream narrative? You've just written it out. Dreams left unworked on are like buses that come and go whilst we stand at the bus stop. By allegory, then we stand at a bus stop. Here comes a bus. We can jump on it and go on a journey, or we can just watch it go. Never mind, there'll be another one along in a minute. That's dreams. There's always more dreams. What do we do? So there'll always be more along soon, but we're still standing still. Each one is a potential journey. Will you get on? If you do, will you know when to get off? And this again is the Jungian trap of getting on and being so preoccupied with the scenery, you know, that they amplify in their archetypal reductive way very often, that the guy stays on the bus longer than he should and ends up in a destination he hadn't intended. So if you do get on the bus of working with a dream, you have to know when to get off. And that is when you've understood it properly. How do you know when you've understood it properly? Well, you feel better. That's the first thing, is you will actually feel better. And then things will start to change to confirm that feeling. So that feeling isn't just a release of an affect in the form of a relief of tension through displacement. So each time you have to test where you're at. You've got to be forensic. Forensic is the only way to solve situations like this. Not with philosophy, not even with science. You have to be forensic about your own ongoing experience. Journaling. So many people journal dreams. Is only a displacement. Working on them is hard, real work. They respond when you do. That means you have more work to do, unfortunately. The psyche knows if you're serious. Writing them out isn't being serious. After a while, the psyche plays with the ego and mirrors or mocks its pathological writing behavior. I put that in inverted commas because that's what psychiatrists say about people who make notes all the time about things. And they think that's a mental illness symptom. I wouldn't go that far. It's a bit of a joke, but it is in the context that if we just keep writing dreams out, a problem can emerge, which I'll elaborate on shortly. Pathological writing by giving it increasingly inflated dreams, which is pacing the ego, and then leading the ego into abstraction and insoluble confusion. This is what's downstream of journaling dreams. They get more and more weird. The content is more and more convoluted, apparently meaningless, and then you just end up confused and feeling deflated because what we've put our expectation into as a method of solving the problem, because the Jungians, for example, say we should, isn't working. And of course, because Jungians don't really go beyond dreams or active imagination, they don't ever solve the problem when this occurs in this way. The psyche prefers the ego to do its job and adapt to the outer world if you enter its world, the world of the psyche, you better be prepared. It's only good manners. But to unpack this and to put it into a perspective which is useful for all of us, any technique that you use to access the unconscious can be overused, and it's almost certain that we will overuse it on the basis of very understandable enthusiasm for engaging with the process. When we appear to get something coming back, we want more of it. That can, though, become a very serious displacement. It's as if the psyche reaches a point where it says, I've given you your answer and you haven't understood it, you just waltzed off into fantasy. So it'll send you inflated Jungian archetypal dreams because that's what you want to hear. And then, of course, what happens? You don't learn the lesson. We don't learn the lesson. And we say, oh, I want more of this. Okay, you can have more, but you're still not doing anything, are you? So it'll give you more. And then suddenly it all stops. The dreams either dry up or they become insoluble confusion and mess. And that's the sign that the libido from the unconscious is moving away from you. It's saying, I've tried dreams and you haven't listened. There's no point wasting any more libido on you. Until you understand that you're doing it wrong, you won't get anything you can fantasize about. Of course, what happens then is the ego compensates. I'm not dreaming anymore, not dreaming anymore. I'll do active imagination. I'll generate a fantasy with my ego to compensate for the fact that I haven't got a dream. And in effect, the psyche goes, oh, go ahead then, so what? I'll make you feel sick instead. I'll duck down into your stomach and give you a sort of bowel. I'll give you a hysterical conversion disorder. I'll give you something because you're just not listening. You're inflating. And this is how that compensatory dynamic goes. So when dreams dry up, don't replace them with something else as an ego fiction. Go back to basics. Ask it nicely, gently, respectfully, slowly, progressively. What do I need to understand? I want to understand. I realize I've made a mistake. I apologize and I need to understand more. I want to act in the world. As soon as you say that, the psyche will give you what you need to know, and it might just emerge as a sudden push out of nowhere that's not been manufactured as I say, a Jungian-based active imagination, conscious fantasy. You'll get something and it's there. And then you can say thank you, have a genuine sense of relief that you've re-established rapport. This one hits so hard, I feel like a lot of what I do is pseudo work, and the psyche hasn't taken me seriously because my ego hasn't worked on the psyche's signal seriously enough. 100%. Absolutely 100%. That's what happens. I said, for example, the dream isn't separate from the whole personality. Any approach that consults the non-cognitive ego, if acceptable to the psyche, any approach will access the same ground out from which the dream is distilled. So a dream is unique only in the sense that it's a medium of expression, but you can get to the same stuff, the same material differently, but you have to approach it properly. You have to approach it with respect. That means you have to be cautious and not be over enthusiastic and demanding like a child, which is how you'll be treated by the unconscious. If the ego inflates and insists that there's going to be fantasies, there's going to be fairy tales and myths and legends and gods and goblins and all the rest of it, is, oh, fucking hell, grow up. In effect, it will say that. So you have to orientate yourself properly. So the same rules apply. That's the orientation that's correct. Methods of practical and real working with dreams always include any and all that the psyche will receive and respond to. That's your ground state. You can use anything so long as you're getting that communication. And you can overdo hypnosis as well. If that's happening, just stop it for a while. Have a break. Do something else. Maybe do something that's creative. Maybe write something, creative writing, not journaling. No, don't do that. Creative writing, because you're accessing the psyche in a different way. And you'll find the messages come through and it's a playground. And it'll say, oh, wonderful. I'll fill your narrative up with all the things that you need to know and understand. And then that will go like this, and then it'll dip, and then suddenly your dreams will increase. So look at the waveform of the psyche, how it wants to regulate. Do not insist or demand that it should be a certain way, and don't overuse any specific technique. So any that it will receive and respond to dialectically on its own terms, that is, not imposed as an internal projection by the ego. The psyche is forgiving. It only ever asks for a mannered cooperation, which is the basis of psychological homeostasis. Cooperation is the basis. The ego tends to see the inner world as an analogue of the outer. We tend to see the inside as being the same. What is within, so too is without, but through a fantasy that's not genuine. There is a distinction, there's a definite distinction there that's important to grasp. That's mistake 101, and is innately rude from the perspective of the psyche if we treat it as if it is the outer world. What happens then is that the pathology turns up as what is within, so too is without. So as we disturb the unconscious, our psychosocial relationships are disturbed. They're filtered through an ego which is in the grip of fantasies. We're not reality orientated. The whole thing's a mess. So what is within, so too is without, at this point then becomes psychopathological. So for reference, I posted this in Complexes yesterday. This is in this thing here. Very close to a lucid dream. This is about somebody asking about a false awakening. I said, lucid dreamers think they stand objectively in relationship to the dreamscape. In other words, they can control it, but they don't. The principal ego fiction is always the primacy of its own will and intention. That's it. That's the living fiction that we have, that we're in control. Jung identified this. We're in control of understanding our perceptions and of our drives, our needs, and our social adaptations. It has to have that distortion. Otherwise, it would be so much in doubt about itself, it would never do anything. So there's a paradox, but it's nevertheless a real one. Lucid dreamers think that they stand objectively in relationship to the dreamscape, but they don't. The principal ego fiction is always the primacy of its own will and intention. This is true in what appears to be outer life and also that of the inner domain. So what I've just said basically is that when what appears to be the inner domain may still be an ego fiction, but we think we're in, usually, unless we have more insight, believe that we're in control of that as an ego position. Things make sense to us, even if it's nonsense in an objective sense. Lucid dreams involve the ego identifying with the dream ego. When we're in a lucid dreaming state, we identify with the dream ego. Whereas normally in dreams, it's the reverse. If you think about that. The dream ego identifies with the waking ego in a dream. In a lucid dream, it's the other way around. Whatever autonomy is provided for, autonomy of the lucid ego, what it thinks it has, is provided for by the producer and director of the dream narrative for the lucid dream ego. It is always that, it is provided. In other words, it's an illusion for the dream ego, and now the lucid dream ego, to believe it's in control of the dream. It's merely become conscious of itself in a differential state. Nevertheless, even when it thinks it's controlling things, that is allowed or it's denied. There is something else which is controlling that, but there is a heightened sense of continuity between the waking and the dream ego at that point. That much is true. But you cannot control the metabolism of your brain and the self-organizing principle of the dream in or to that extent. That's a fiction, that's an illusion, it's an ego inflation, and I say that as someone who does lucidly dream. The lucid dream ego is a method actor who believes its own performance. Think about that. That's what method actors do. They take on that and they believe it, they engage with it to the point where they identify with it. As if a participant observer of itself in this so-called lucid state. Similarly, when the waking ego produces narrative hypotheticals, which is in the context of the question from the complex section that this was originally written for, creatively, it's inevitable that it is being directed from within by the commissioning producer who orchestrates it all. The lucid dream ego believes that, oh, I can control my dream. That's hugely inflationary, but why is it being allowed for? That's the question. If you're in a lucid dream state, you need to say, why do I have this heightened sense of ego consciousness and identity? Rather than saying, I can do anything, say, why have I been given this? Well, what's the purpose? I'm meant to remember this more than usual, for example. So it's not just the self-concept which is contiguous between being awake and being in the dream. It's also the ego state itself. So there isn't a clear separation along that bandwidth between dream ego and waking ego. The lucid ego conjoins them. That means you're really meant to understand this situation that you're in. I say it's relevant, remembering that context decides everything in terms of any approach to the dynamic psyche. So-called archetypal amplification is that which is most likely to mislead through internalized, theory-based suggestion, and then resultant ego fictions about that theory. The dream isn't separate from the whole personality, and then I go into what I've just said. And then if we go to the next paragraph down from that, this is a slight extension. Dialectics take time. People are impatient, but it's okay to start anywhere or even in error. When the common ground isn't known, it has to be discovered. The common ground between the ego and the unconscious, we have to find that. That's the proper activity. That necessitates a preliminary contact, and this is facilitated by a mannered approach, which gives natural respect to the unconscious. A mannered response, acknowledging our respect, usually follows by being open to the language of the other, even if not initially understood. This invites a gentle gesture by the other, i.e. to say the unconscious, to assist our understanding. It's a process dynamic. Theory should be set aside until such time as it is needed. And it's only needed in order to frame an understanding of what has been experienced after the fact. I should have added that, after the fact of that experience. Experience is the most important thing. Then we can apply an analytical approach to understanding what we have been aware of, what we've been able to grasp and understand.
I was just thinking back to Dream with the Scooby-Doo character, because obviously he has language, but it's not a language at which he can communicate in the way that we would.
Yeah.
So that is almost like language of the other in a way, to be understood.
Yes.
And so just as you were going through that, and I was thinking about the characters in his dream, and I presume he's given us most of the context, the Scooby-Doo character is probably the most helpful for the reasons that you said before.
It was Shaggy, wasn't it? Scooby himself didn't appear. I don't think it was Shaggy.
Oh right, I thought you talked about Scooby-Doo in relation to Shaggy.
Because I was putting Shaggy in the context that he originates from.
I see, but Scooby-Doo wasn't actually in the dream, right? Okay, but as an amplification on from Shaggy, it's still a useful thing to do, isn't it? Because
absolutely,
you say as an image, you know, he's a theriomorph, and also there is an attempt at communication. And the other thing it reminded me of too was that hopefully this isn't a kind of an association too far, but for people who have difficulty with speech and communicating, one of the things that you nearly always get from them, even if the speech itself is distorted in some way, is the affect.
Yeah, the emotion,
they usually register the affect, which of course connects you to instinct.
It does.
And clearly this is the thing that he's needing to do himself, is to reconnect or realign with his instincts properly. So I just thought I'd add that in. You know, it may or may not be relevant.
No, it is. It's very helpful.
Specifically to him, or you know, if it was to be offered to himself, he might reject that amplification of it. But
that, to be honest, is why I said that people have to be able to receive.
Yeah.
You can't give to people who cannot receive.
No.
And that's why I don't bother with dream analysis on the Discord, because I have to write a bloody book for each one. And I'm not being funny when I say that, but people tend to drain you. You know, and you'll find this with your practice. If you go too far with dreams, they are inductive, aren't they? We've learned on hard experience, haven't we, that you only use them when you need to with people, otherwise you can't escape. And they'll come in and they'll throw 10 or 20 of them at you. You know, they have done that, certainly with me.
Oh, definitely with you. And then of course it becomes a transferential issue, doesn't it, as well, and it gets ever more complicated. So it's not something you should do yourself in the context of your own life or with someone that you're working with, unless you absolutely have to.
I honestly think that his situation is relatively simple. But he's doing everything wrong. It's not his fault because he's not getting help as such, and he's not asking for it. But there you go. In effect, he's journaling because he's writing these things out. That's okay. That they're looking for help, and people do try and interpret one another's dreams. I just leave it alone because I know how potentially dangerous that can be.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of the shaggy character too, I mean, it's abstracted out from its context as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
And if you abstract yourself out from, say, your own context, the context of your family, then you won't necessarily see the underlying dynamics. You won't be switched on to your instincts properly, or see how they're being played. So I think with something like that, you would have to broaden it out in the way that you did.
Yeah, in that context.
I think so. Yeah.